Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast and welcome Diana to the podcast again.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So happy to have you here. We have so much amazing energy to share today. We are actually going to talk about the new moon in Cancer, which will be so beautiful because we're experiencing it always around the midsummer or Lita, the time of the year when for us in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the strongest sun, the most abundant summer, and Mother Earth is flourishing. It's all about fertility and love. So I'm really excited to talk about this new moon with you, and also the Cancer season, which is so beautiful and nourishing. And for everyone who's joining today, I want to mention that on June 28th, when the new moon actually occurs, me and Diana will host another online ceremony together, ritual, which will be connected to this new moon. And the theme will be to dive into the womb of the mother, or into the womb of yourself, of creation. It's going to be an online ceremony through Zoom. And if you can't join live, you will get the recording, and it's going to be in the western part of the US, so the Pacific time will be 10 a.m. and on the eastern part of the US it's 1 p.m. and here in Central Europe it's going to be 7 p.m. in the evening. So it's on Tuesday, June 28th, and we can't wait to share with you already now the astrology of the new moon. And maybe Diana, you want to just shortly introduce yourself if someone here hasn't heard our previous podcast episodes together.
Sure. So I'm Diana Westley. I'm an evolutionary astrologer and spiritual coach. And basically, the form of astrology that I practice really emphasizes the evolution of our souls over time. So when I look at a person's chart, I'm looking at kind of where they're coming from in past lifetimes, what karmic patterns and conditioning they hold, what gifts and talents and wisdom they're bringing into this lifetime, as well as what they need to kind of develop into and grow toward to continue their evolution and not stay stuck in the karmic past. I also bring in a lot of feminine asteroids, so asteroids named after goddesses and feminine mythological figures and religious figures to really kind of round out that experience of the feminine and the feminine journey through the lens of astrology. So I'm really excited to explore kind of the evolutionary purpose of this new moon, both today and in our ceremony, as well as kind of bringing in and celebrating and honoring some of the goddesses and feminine archetypes that are present.
That's so lovely. And we do love to work with the divine feminine. We always do that. So in our ceremonies, we always call in any energy that is supporting us and guiding us, and also working consciously with the divine feminine, different aspects of the goddess, the divine mother, the womb of creation, as we said about this particular new moon, because Cancer is kind of like this watery realms of the womb, and it's about going within. And I feel like it's a really good time to do that after Gemini season. It really tends to help us to slow down. So I'm really excited for our circle and for the conversation today. And we just had a full moon in Sagittarius, which is so different because it's not only a fire sign, but it's really expansive and more like young. And I would say that Cancer is like almost the most yin energy that we find. Scorpio even more because we go even in more into the darkness. But the Cancer energy is so beautiful, and the theme of this time is really to, for me, it's really about connecting back to our emotional body and our intuition, and to also come back to nourishing ourselves. So it's like the mother archetype, but it's really how we also mother ourselves and create healthy boundaries, and to also connect with our inner child, because I feel like Cancer is both the mother and the child at the same time. So maybe, Diana, you want to start by talking about some, of course, in the ceremony, we will talk deeper about the astrology and the asteroids and everything. So everyone who's wanting to learn about that, it's great if you want to do that, if you want to join us. And we have an early bird price up until 25th of June. So if you're interested, you can click the link in the show notes. But Diana, maybe you want to start by talking about the sign and also the time we're in when this new moon will happen.
Sure. And I think it's really interesting that you brought up that this new moon does follow the full moon in Sagittarius, and that happens every year. That's just kind of the natural flow of things. But Sagittarius and Cancer, they actually do have some interesting things in common, even though they're super different signs. I think it's more that Sagittarius has this very and not all Sagittarians will agree with this. There's introverted and extroverted expressions of the sign Sagittarius, but kind of in its purest form, Sagittarius wants to expand out into the world, to learn new things, to seek truths and things like that. Whereas Cancer is kind of more coming back to itself, and coming back to the truth that exists there, so that it can expand out in a different way. As Sharon brought up, Cancer is the sign of the mother, and there's nothing more expansive than growing and creating a baby, whether this is literal or figurative, a creative baby, something brand new. That's a very expansive experience. It's just a different form of expansion. And so I do think it's really interesting, though, that there is this kind of shared energy as we move from the full moon in Sagittarius into the new moon in Cancer. There is this expansive quality, this truth-seeking quality, but we're often kind of seeking it in different ways. So there's definitely this bridge that exists between the two, which is really beautiful. With the new moon in Cancer, kind of generally speaking, there's a lot of focused energy. So Cancer is the sign associated with the moon. It's ruled by the moon. So when we look at new moons, we often look at the planet that is ruling that new moon. But in the case of a Cancer new moon, it rules itself. So there's nowhere else to look, really. You can look at other aspects the moon is making to other planets, and we'll do that as well. But it's this very concentrated, focused energy under the new moon. And so there's a lot of power and potential in very new beginnings, birthing something, radically and drastically new. And also, as Sharon mentioned, there is this energy of kind of coming home to ourselves, so we're not as distracted. There's not like multiple things kind of pulling our attention in different directions. There's this ability to really plant this new seed, plant a seed of intention, plant literal seeds of with actions and things that we do to kind of begin new processes, create new life in different forms. But again, the power of that new moon in Cancer is just so much concentrated, focused energy around whatever it is that we hope to give birth to. As Sharon mentioned, there is this connection to womb energy. There's a connection to the mother. There's a connection to the child. In general, it tends to be a really powerful time for kind of beginning anew, around our experience of the mother archetype, around our experience of our own inner child. So kind of between actually this full moon that we just had and the new moon in Cancer, now that we're in this waning cycle, moving towards the dark moon phase right before the new moon. This is actually a really powerful time for, releasing stagnant and stuck wounds and energy that's in that kind of womb space. Again, if you're a man listening to this, and the womb specifically isn't something that you resonate with, this is a powerful time to be healing. Any wounds that are held around, your own inner feminine, around your own experience of your mother, or your experience of like nurturing and mothering others. That's not gender specific. And similarly, a really powerful time for kind of connecting with that child within us. Any fears that inner child has, any maybe traumatic or difficult memories, or even just experiences of being misunderstood, unloved, not accepted. Cancer is this very protective, nurturing, all accepting, all loving sign. It's kind of like this celestial hug that's here to kind of remind us that no matter what our tangible lived experiences of the mother and the child are, there's always this opportunity to come back to to the goddess, to the earth, to this archetypal energy that exists out there around the mother, to remother ourselves, reparent ourselves, forgive, anything that's kind of caught up in our energetic sphere around the mother-child experience, and yeah, as we work through this Cancer cycle and we enter into Leo as the following one, that's where we really get this like blissed out, joyous child energy that's ready to, creatively express itself and take up space and shine and be radiant. So it's all kind of part of the process. We're doing, a lot of coming back to ourselves, a lot of healing, again, specifically those two archetypes, while we're working with this Cancer energy that's very generative, very procreative, very creative in its own right. But it again kind of allows for the birth of the sun, allows for the birth of our fullest, brightest, shiniest, most dazzling and brilliant creative selves. So that's some of the energy that we're going to be working with, again, both leading up to the new moon, under the new moon, during Cancer season in general. Yeah, so that's kind of the high level work we're doing.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing. I just had to also look into, because the new moon is happening a week after the summer solstice, which is also like a major turning point. So it's a summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. And those are such important times on like earth level, like with Mother Earth and nature, and also the sun level, the sun who's like shifting either into its death or into its birth. So in the south, it's going to be like the birth of the sun, but for us, it's going to be the strongest point. So here in the Nordics, for example, we have, it's really, really bright right now, and it's kind of getting dark maybe an hour in the night, and then it's getting light again. So it's really, we are in a time with a lot of light and having more energy. And the summer solstice is also from a nature religion perspective, a really beautiful time of the goddess. And for those of you who do celebrate this time, midsummer or Lita, it's, everyone knows it's like this very fertile energy, very loving, romantic, because also somehow, like when we look out into nature and we see the flowers and everything that's growing, it's also like a birth of the earth again, or like a flourishing. And I feel like the flowers is so much representing the goddess as well. So we're reminded of her everywhere, right? That aspect of her. So like leading up now until the 21st, you can really work on meditating what you are, because it's kind of like a new chapter of the year. It does shift the energy, the solstices, right?
Yeah.
So we are like, now we have had the full moon, and the moon is becoming darker and darker. Maybe we're going more within and also releasing. And then with the summer solstice, like having a beautiful ritual or being in with the earth and Mother Earth, working with her plants and flowers. And you can have there's so many old rituals you can do around the summer solstice that is also then preparing you for the new moon, because the new moon will really be, it will be the first new moon after the solstice and the shift, when all of a sudden the sun is either getting more brighter or it's getting a little bit darker. And I just feel like the Cancer season usually tends to be, it's also something where we are allowed to, even, it doesn't matter what gender you define yourself as or don't define yourself as. It's really embodying the divine feminine within. That's the time of the year. It's really gentle, and it's really also meditating back to the Divine Mother, which is really, like you also said, it's an unconditional, very much holding us in a unconditional way, and we can connect with that. And I think that that's really important for our ceremony as well, that we invoke that energy, because when we look back, we have come from a mother who has come from a mother who has come from a mother. It's like going so far back to some source. And in yogic philosophy, everything is birthed from this cosmic womb. And this is the time of the year where we can really work with that. So if we like the womb space is such a important portal, and we can have it even if we don't have the physical womb. It's also men and women can work with this space. It's a creative space. It's like what we talked about, the Svadhisthana chakra area. And there's other words also for this creative force. And it's in healing work, it's like the main point or source where you work from. So there's so much there. And I really feel like, and even if you look at the sign of Cancer and the crab and all of that, it is kind of womb-like. It's you know, this shape of the crab with the hands coming out. It's kind of like the womb and the fallopian tubes and all of the reproductive essence. And then that it's being somewhere in between the water and land as well. So it's like a dual energy. I really feel that also as a Cancerian myself, as a sun in Cancer, there is like a duality in the sun. So it does embodies this nurturing, wanting to take care of everything and everyone, feeling responsible for everyone. And then also having the need to be nourished and nurtured. It's like a balance. And I think that's really important for all of us to work with.
Definitely. I think it's really interesting that you brought up, the solstice again in midsummer, and this is the longest day of the year, and so it's a time where we are really kind of celebrating and worshiping the sun. And I think it's always been kind of interesting to me that that is the start of Cancer season, which is ruled by the moon. So there's kind of this inherently, at least in the northern hemisphere, right? In the southern hemisphere, actually, it's a little bit more aligned because you have these really long nights during Cancer season. You see more of the moon. But in the northern hemisphere, it reminds me there's this really beautiful call to balance. Even during the long days, we're really honoring and not forgetting kind of the importance of the moon with Cancer, having that moon rulership. Um, and it's also, again, this kind of beautiful balancing act between the masculine and the feminine that we happen to have the summer solstice followed by this new moon in Cancer, because during a new moon the sun and the moon come together. And part of why we experience that darkness during a new moon is because the sun isn't casting its light on the moon. They're not separate in a way where it can. And so again, right after this major celebration of the sun, while also beginning this season where we really honor the moon, we have this coming together of the two, which again just kind of adds potency and power and concentration and focus to whatever it is that we're hoping to create or manifest or bring into our lives. So every year this is a really powerful lunation to work with. But this year in particular, we have a lot of feminine energies. There's a lot of feminine asteroids kind of and significant feminine points that are being pulled into this moon. We have the North Node in Taurus right now, which is a yin feminine energy ruled by Venus, a feminine planet. And so we're working with this energy a little bit more strongly than maybe in the average year. But I also loved what Sharon was saying about, coming, like being out in nature as part of this celebration. Again, in the northern hemisphere, there may be a little bit more inspiration to do that with long days and maybe warmer weather. But the southern hemisphere, it's also powerful and impactful. But up in the north, we do have a lot of flowers, which kind of do have this feminine energy about them. And then we also have them being supported by the masculine, by the different pollinators, the bees, the hummingbirds, all of these insects and animal life that are needed in order for the flowers to survive and proliferate and so on. And so there's this really beautiful, mutually receptive relationship between the masculine and the feminine, kind of everywhere we look during this time of year. And again, that's going to be, there's a lot of emphasis on, and when I say masculine and feminine, like Sharon said, this isn't defined as like men and women in the way that sometimes we kind of pigeonhole these terms into those. It's more an energy that we all experience both of, and we see in nature. And so I really love that idea of spending the time in nature, noticing the feminine in nature, and also noticing this like reciprocal, mutually beneficial relationship that's happening between the two. And when we think about Cancer as this very like fertile energy as well, it also reminds us that there's this need for both inputs. For new things to come about, to be born, quite literally babies and new life for most organisms, but also for that next masterpiece to be written, for that project to sprout legs and take off. We need both the rest, the receptivity, the intuition, the patience, the ability to hold space, and we need the more active energy that helps us bring these things into manifestation. So lots of that energy around this new moon as well. And Sharon, would you like me to get into some of the more specific aspects of this new moon, maybe just one or two? I don't know if you
Yeah.
have time for that.
Yeah, that would be great, actually. So we know how to prepare. And I just want to say that um, what you are speaking about with the creative. So if we say that all is created, like everything is created from one source, and then that source is also within us, I got an image that, so we move into this Cancer season to work with this creative inner force. And then, and also traditionally, this creative space or the womb space is then connecting to the heart. So in August, or like end of July, then when Leo starts, like it bursts out from the heart, right? So it's like coming out and expressing itself. So it's really, I just got that visual, and it's so beautiful. Like these weeks that we will have in Cancer season, it will be Cancer season, of course, when the new moon happens. But it's really beautiful, like with the summer solstice. And I just want to say also that this sun can also be a goddess. We always see it as a god or as a masculine aspect. But there are traditions, and I think including here, that the goddess is also the sun.
Yeah.
Because in the end, like the Shakti, the whole, like the all of life is the feminine, the goddess manifested.
Yeah.
So it's still like one aspect of the goddess, because
Definitely.
this fiery energy. But I really saw that in front of me, that with this new moon we can really start to be intentional with what we're creating from within, and then the next new moon in Leo will be more of like moving that into expressing it. But I would love to hear some of the details, and in the ceremony we will of course talk much more deeply about it, so that you can relate it to your own chart as well. So yeah, go ahead, Diana. I would love to hear.
Yeah, and that was a really good point, Sharon, that there is this other side to the goddess, and I think maybe it's been a little bit forgotten, over a couple of millennia now, whereas a lot of ancient goddesses did have a linkage to the sun. They had more of a linkage to, again, kind of that fiery quality. In a lot of different traditions in different parts of the world, they were associated with fire and bringing kind of that warmth and that light of fire, which again is the sun in a lot of ways. And so I'm really glad you brought that up, because I do think, again, this North Node in Taurus that we're working with right now, especially with like the big North Node Uranus conjunction that we have coming up, is a really good time to be rethinking and rewriting kind of the story of what it is to be feminine, to experience the feminine, to work with feminine energy. And actually, this new moon has the potential to really help us be rethinking that too. So the biggest goddess present during this, or biggest feminine energy present during this new moon, is actually Lilith. So the new moon is going to be sitting exactly conjunct Black Moon Lilith, but also oscillating Lilith. So Black Moon is like the average of what oscillating Lilith is doing. She's kind of like wild in her movement, but oscillating Lilith also happens to be right there with the new moon, and so is asteroid Lilith. And so in mythology, I typically work with Lilith more as the first wife of Adam. Before that, she was supposed to be one of Inanna's handmaidens. And so she has like a really kind of ancient mythology that goes way back. But in the telling of the myth of Adam and Lilith, Adam and Lilith are both made from the earth. And Adam wants Lilith to be kind of subservient to him, to be less equal than him, because as the story goes, Lilith was supposed to have been created from impure sediment, whereas Adam was created from pure sediment. And Lilith basically is like, nope, like either I'm equal or I'm out of here. And she decides to flee, and then becomes kind of this demonized, vilified character in kind of the rest of the myth or the story. And Adam goes on to have Eve created from his rib, so that it's very clear that, you know, the feminine, or, you know, the woman is meant to be subservient to the man, is here to be of service to the man, and so on. But Lilith has this quality of being kind of demanding her equality. She's fiery. She's not passive. She's not necessarily receptive. You know, some of these words I was previously using for the feminine. She is active. She has this beautiful balance of being deeply attuned to her wildness, to her instincts, to her truth, to her darkness as well, and really, you know, knowing herself fully, and operating from a very empowered place. And so when we're working with Black Moon Lilith in particular, this is a very empowered form of Lilith. In kind of the myth, after she leaves Adam, she goes to the Red Sea out in the desert, and again kind of becomes this demon. But the way that we interpret that is that she was actually becoming kind of like a wild animal again. She was reconnecting with her wildness, reconnecting again with those instincts, with that truth that lived within her, becoming embodied, becoming empowered, and you know, through connecting with her wildness, she becomes like a more complete woman, a more complete human, through not overriding the wisdom of her body, and things like that. And so that's a very empowering side of working with Black Moon Lilith. She is a dark goddess, so she really forces us to get honest with ourselves, to cut through any illusions, any untruths, any you know, false identities or false personas maybe we've been hiding behind, instead of really honoring and committing to our truth. She encourages us to get a little bit angry. She encourages us to be okay with people not liking us, with kind of committing to our own truth, our own path, and yeah, accepting that others may vilify or demonize us in that process. But she is a very empowering energy when we're willing to work with her consciously, and allow her to kind of guide us back to ourselves. Um, there's also another kind of point that we use for Lilith, and that's called Dark Moon Lilith, or Waldemoth Lilith. And interestingly, she is currently, during this new moon, she'll be in Aries, conjunct Jupiter, which is going to be squaring, making this kind of challenging 90-degree aspect to the new moon. And so Dark Moon Lilith, or like Waldemoth Lilith, represents this point in Lilith's journey where she is sitting by the Red Sea, rewilding, but like also purging an incredible amount, purging rage and anger and expectations of what could have been, and, you know, hurt and wounds and pain, and all of these things that need to be purged and released for her to be able to hear her intuition, to tune into those instincts, to really connect with the wisdom that lives within her. And so, you know, when I see Dark Moon Lilith sitting with Jupiter squaring this new moon in Cancer, I see this need to really purge and release and cleanse ourselves of beliefs in particular that are keeping us from, again, coming back to our truth, coming into our power. Generally speaking, anything Jupiter does tends to be kind of benefic or supportive. And so even in square aspect to this new moon, it's giving us, again, this expansive boost of energy, optimism, faith, the ability to dream bigger. There is that quality to it. But I sense that there is going to be this kind of inherent inner challenge that we're working with, of, again, kind of taking, maybe quite literally, stepping into nature, going to a desert, going and being near a body of water, if that's something that's accessible to us. And again, allowing ourselves to cleanse, purge, release anything that's kept us from maybe believing in ourselves, anything in Aries that's also kept us from maybe this fiery version of the feminine. Maybe this is a big opportunity, again, to rewrite our own experience and our own story around what it is to be feminine, and maybe bringing in more of that fire, more of the dark goddess energy, more of the empowerment, and so on. And so that's going to be a really, really big energy around this new moon. Yeah, I'll leave it there for a second, because I know Sharon also knows quite a bit about Lilith, and yeah.
That's so interesting and so beautiful, because Lilith's story actually dates back many thousand years ago, like back to the stories of Ishtar and Inanna, and she appears there. And most recently, I listened to a scholar who's written also about Eve, with her book that she, I think, recently published, where like the true translations of the text and the different parts of the story of Eve, or Adam and Eve, is really revealed. And it's not that it has been translated so many times and rewritten, but the original text is that it was Eve that gave life to Adam. Because if you look at, like the Shiva and Shakti element, it's like Shiva is not awakened if Shakti is not present. It's this life force energy. So it's really interesting. And there we have also it's always connected to the serpent energy, even in the Sumerian texts with Lilith, because since I read a lot about Inanna's stories, it's the story of when she has this hulupu tree, and Lilith and the serpent is nesting, like staying in the tree, but she wants it to make her throne or bed or throne bed out of it. So the story is really, it's really interesting how it's evolved, and to work with Lilith energy is really what we in our traditions of daughter of Ishtar is all about. It's to be like sovereign and like enthroned in our feminine energy and in our full power during the summer solstice. So it's going to be a great time to work with that energy, and we'll bring in those elements into our ceremony, the rituals, the meditations. We always work with also goddess oracle cards for the group to see what we need to like focus on. So we have different elements there. But is there anything else that you want to share around the new moon and the energy that we're moving towards right now?
No, I think I really appreciated you sharing that perspective as well, because there's so many tellings of all of these stories, and a lot of it really comes down to who's in control of the story and what their agenda is for any given point in time. And so I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into this Lilith archetype. There's a few other goddesses that are really figuring strongly into this new moon as well. So I'm looking forward to exploring those with everyone during the ceremony. But yeah, I think, as we're rounding out Gemini season, since we're talking about story so much, and Gemini has this linkage to story, to Mercury, to kind of the lens through which we view the world, and kind of the perspectives that we hold. Again, with this recent full moon in Sagittarius, which also is linked to beliefs, which also has this quality of story about it. Maybe just be in preparation for this new moon, be thinking about, what are the stories that we're living our lives by. With the waning moon, there's this beautiful opportunity to get really clear with these things. There's a dark goddess quality to the dark moon, and also to the waning moon, preparing for the new moon. And it asks us to be really real, really raw, really honest with ourselves. And then Sagittarius and Gemini is such beautiful energy for really, kind of piercing the veil and getting clear on what those unconscious stories are that have been driving us. And so again, there's this really powerful opportunity leading up to the new moon, leading up to the ceremony as well, to be thinking about what these stories are, how we want to rewrite them, whether they're like ancient stories that have been evolved to serve or support a certain group that we want to reclaim, whether they're personal stories, familial stories, cultural stories, whatever it may be. This is a really powerful time to be kind of releasing and rewriting and alchemizing and transforming those stories in preparation for this new moon work we'll be doing. So yeah, I just wanted to offer that for the coming weeks in preparation for this new beginning.
Yeah, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Diana. It's it's going to be beautiful to work in ceremony together again, and we invite everyone who wants to work with these energies and to connect with deeper healing, and being very intentional what we want to create also over the month ahead of the new moon. It's going to be a lot of interesting things coming up because it's so intuitive as well. Mm-hmm. So everyone who's interested to read more about this and to sign up with early bird discount, you can click the link in the show notes, and you can always connect with me and Diana through Facebook or Instagram or email if you have any questions leading up to the ceremony. And yeah, thank you so much, Diana, again, for sharing your wisdom and so many beautiful insights. You will be sharing even more during the ceremony, and I can't wait to listen to that as well.
Of course, and thank you, Sharon, as well. It's just always so fun to come on the podcast and do work with you. You just bring so much ancient wisdom as well as kind of knowledge from all of the work and the schooling and education and everything you've done. So it's always a really good and exciting and inspiring energy being here with you, and I hope others are feeling that as well, and feeling inspired and excited for kind of some of the next chapters and milestones that are ahead of us. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and we'll look forward to seeing hopefully a good number of you in a couple of weeks at the ceremony.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.